through moderation issue. In one should be a facilitator for peace by highlighting the very important role played by teachers and scientists and scholars, leaders. In the same way, he highlighted the role played by religions to implement an environment that should promote piety, and foster living together and good understanding. Ethic and morality are the cornerstone for living together. It's a very important reference to boost souls and mindset and to get away from discrepancies and disputes and to move toward harmonies, peace, and living together. Welfare in the public. With him. The Mahadara experience in Mauritania, the traditional education institutions in Mauritania and in Africa. You have the floor, gentlemen.
The Zawiya is the and the ulama, Mokhtar Ould Bouna, when the social role, as a matter of fact, as you might already know it, then we also used several notions of the ulama, the rulings. There's a sort of a chain relationship that shows that many ulamas went through influence in Northern Africa, Zaytuna, inside Islam, with the settlement of its faith and the fact of perpetrating upon is doing good. Is enabled to propagate Islam in the most remote areas where the mahdarat were to be found. What does what they are to get closer, how they could manage to adoration, the fact of giving money to a list of stages, of course, is to, after the faith and the hasad, we have the deeds of Islam. We have to take care of our bodies. The deeds concern the body. The pilgrimage in the past, pilgrimage to Mecca. May I take a few more minutes to keep on developing that point? I'd like to repeat and insist on the fact that the Mahdara has enabled imposition of the Arabic words, Arabic or language, or the religion Islam in the Muslim Western world, on the African continent, has been propagating in a fluid and pacific manner. Now, people who've been converting to Islam in Africa accepted this religion in a voluntary manner. Society accepted to take on Islam besides any institutions, besides or independently from any schoolings, and this is a very important point. Mahdara, further, enabled to broadcast a methodology of teaching and created a civilizational mindset that played a tremendous influence on others because it aims to use reasoning and knowledge at the same time as faith. And the very last point is that this method is a very important method and must be preserved. Nowadays, our universities preserve the academic knowledge, yet in this region, one needs to give more importance to the social dimension of this institution. Thank you very much.
صديقي محمد على هذه الورقة الهامة التي حملتنا إلى أجواء المحضرة الشنقيطية. والأخ محمد بالنسبة للذين لا يعرفونه هو سليل هذه المدرسة بقدر ما هو أيضا سليل المدرسة الحديثة، وهو ذو تكوين فلسفي وأنثروبولوجي قوي جدا. أعطي الكلمة الآن إلى فضيلة الدكتور أحمد ممدوح، وهو أمين الفتوى، أمين دار الفتوى من جمهورية مصر العربية الشقيقة، وهو أحد العلماء البارزين وله فتاوى كثيرة في مختلف مشاكل وإشكالات الحياة الحديثة المطروحة اليوم على المجتمع المسلم. ولا شك أن حديثه سيكون حديثا مهما وشيقا وممتعا عن هذه الجامعة العريقة التي هي جامعة الجامعات، ولها مكانة خاصة في قلوب كل المسلمين، ونحن في هذه البلاد طبعا نكون لها اهتماما خاصا. فليتفضل مشكورا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. العلم هو ميراث النبوة كما ورد في الحديث الشريف عند أبي داود وغيره أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إن العلماء ورثة الأنبياء، وإن الأنبياء لم يورثوا دينارا ولا درهما، وإنما ورثوا العلم، فمن أخذه فقد أخذ بحظ وافر. هذا الميراث النبوي الذي ورثه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لأصحابه، وهم بدورهم ورثوه لتابعيهم، وهؤلاء بدورهم ورثوه إلى تابعيهم هم الآخرون. لم يكن هذا العلم هو مجرد نصوص تنقل، بل كان هذا العلم نصوص وزيادة. هذه الزيادة هي تلك الأفهام المحتفة بهذه النصوص التي تنقل كذلك مع النصوص، فيستطيع الدارس أن يتعرف من خلال هذه الأفهام وهذه القواعد وهذه الضوابط، يتعرف بها على الصحيح ويميز بينه وبين الباطل. وإلا فلو كان المنقول هو مجرد نصوص فقط لكان الأمر كما كان مع الخوارج الذين قال فيهم الحبر بن عباس: يأتون بآيات الله التي أنزلها الله في المشركين ويجعلونها في عباده المؤمنين. هؤلاء قد استدلوا بالنصوص بمعزل عن الأفهام الموروثة، الأفهام التي لم يخترعها الصحابة، بل إنهم هم الذين عاينوا الوحي وشهدوا أسباب النزول وعايشوا أسباب الورود، ورأوا تصرفات النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كيف تكون. ومع ذلك فإن عندهم من الذائقة العربية والملكة التامة ما يجعلهم أعلم بتلك النصوص وبمراميها وبمعانيها من غيرهم، فهذا هو الذي نقلوه: نصوص وفهوم. هذه الفهوم والنصوص ظلت
deep meaning of this text. Now, this interpretation was conveyed from one generation to another. It was transferred by a continuous heritage process that was never interrupted throughout the centuries, and each century is going to bring its own touch to these knowledges before it will be transferred to the next generation. Up to the moment when there was a turnkey moment and any of these ideas that were scattered, all of this science was shaped up in the format that it was to be somehow to be called a science, meaning that it stemmed from something that was not basically regulated to be transferred into a scientific corpus, well regulated and based on clear and very simple principles with a high percentage of exactitude. And we talked about the 10 well-known principles by wise men, by literate people. These principles precisely mark the change of the transfer of these knowledges of a lambda person towards another more specialized person, another expert, in order to give this scientific aspect or nature to this knowledge, to this heritage. As I was saying, I'm not only talking about texts, but it could be rather skills that are deeply rooted and enable us to interpret, to use, to forge, and to make use of any necessary tools in order to serve the objectives of any scientific studies. And this is what we are going to call the scientific philosophy and the correlated relationships, or even any discrepancies or differentiations in these very realms or disciplines are crucial. These skills are going to be gradually acquired in time, since in the beginning this was to be learned by heart, and then it was to be enshrined and written in the books by scribes. So this is what we are going to do in this operation of transfer of knowledge and know-how in scientific institutions are scattered around the world, but the very objective is the same. They would work according to the same methodology, the mosque, the Zawiya school, Mahdara. There are different names in Morocco, in Yemen, in Mauritania, or others. The objective, therefore, remains the same, even if the curricula might differ. Al-Azhar, over a period of 1,000 years, these scientific institutions served the Sharia, the Islamic law, served its institutions. This institute was making the difference due to its diversity. It was not only focusing on one special right, but was rather open to the universality of rights. And it detached itself from the regional divergences and became now a destination for any student of choice because he could learn from the best. Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haythami said that nowhere in the world can you find a single focus point gathering such a wide number of literate people and of great professors. It was a destination of knowledge and of science, of wisdom, and it was a sort of a cultural medium to, give birth to a diversity, to learn about the different rights. And this is why the personality of any Al-Azhar student will have a very strong personality. He will be systematically very open-minded, flexible, and he can understand different angles, different perceptions and visions from the religion without adopting a rigid posture, which would be then condemned to a very specific, maybe more radical attitude. So this case law went way above the psychological impact, and these courses have become now the logical extension of any scientific efforts to serve any different rights in order to contribute to the exactitude, to the precision of the knowledge of our religion. And this has enabled the scholars, the Al-Azhar experts, this is why they have become examples to be followed. And this is how they greatly contributed to the separation of the notebook of the Mongre, and also to determine the exactitude of the knowledge. Al-Umam Laini, they are Alafit, we can go to the Zurqani. These are Malikite wise men and scholars. Sheikh al-Islam, Wash al-Arbini, they are Shafa'id. Mr. Khawati are Khanabit. So there are different kinds of rights and diversities, and in the Egyptian publications, in addition, you can find any kinds of differences in these different disciplines. Azhar Sharif also has taught many other sciences that are extremely important, exegesis and interpretation, as well as the sciences of methodologies, and these sciences were disclosed by assessment sciences. There are 12 sciences, which namely are a must-have passage for any student who is going to acquire this knowledge as time goes by, and will become able after his journey of this academic development, in order to show that he has become a scientist, he has become a scholar, and learning from different schools and different rights and disciplines. And here lies the difficulty, because we were to train these students in the multifaceted realm in order to be sufficiently solid in their training and having a flawless maturity in order for their academic journey to be satisfactory. Therefore, these sciences were the very groundings of the training. And by the way, this does not prevent from the learning of other sciences. Sheikh Ahmad al-Buri says that some sciences taught at the time reached the level of 35 specialties beyond Islamic law. They studied philosophy, engineering, mathematics, music, science that is in fact based on mathematic criteria. Sheikh Ashhadiri indicated these details. Now, science as such cannot be criticized, but one should understand that in the way we are going to use science matters, since the instrumentalization of science is going to enable us to enlarge our perspectives, our landscapes, and this is the very difference that makes the difference between the different schools, and what is the causality relationship, what is the parcel and the all, any relationship between any elements surrounding the parcel. One can elucidate a problem, but it's not going to be possible without the necessary competences and methodological skills to see clearly within that equation. So this is just a glimpse of Tarim al-Atir, the traditional learning way at the Azhar time. And this started in the framework of an operation in order to share in an oral manner on many hadiths about the Prophet. And we intended for the creatures to understand how the Creator could have mercy on you. So this is the sort of a red thread on which everything is going to be based, and this is drawn from the principle that one should be merciful. Mercy is the very basis of peace that is intended to be propagated in Muslim countries. As we preserve the transmission of the knowledge of the Islamic law, relationships, and we preserve them in order to maintain the very integrity of this so noble discipline. Thank you very much for your very warm welcome and kind attention. Salam alaikum.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Ahmad Mdour, Thank you for your great input. Thank you for your delivery. We have heard about Sheikh Khalil, Sheikh Dardawi. Those individuals are very important people in this environment. The fourth input is coming from a neighboring country. Sheikh Taha from Senegal is an imam from the Republic of Senegal. Sir is the grandson of Judge Rafal, founding father of a scholar institution in Senegal, which gave birth to many experts and scholars. Abdel Kader was a great personality in Senegal and in neighboring countries. He's going to tell us about this very important school and the way it disseminated its knowledge. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the grateful and the merciful. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon the Prophet, his family and his companions. I think that I don't have enough time to deep dive in this very important item, this very important topic. It's a new topic for that kind of gathering. It is very rare to elaborate on the history of this philosophy, of this school. Traditional education is very important in Senegal, but I would like to stick to the time as much as I can. University peer, university peer thinker. A scholar called Sher Salah said that peer could be written with a B, beer. Why? Let me highlight this very important point. We need to determine how we got to the genesis of this phrasing. Beer is an Arabic word. Beer is a well in Arabic. A beer stands for well in Arabic. It comes from Arabic. It's a well. Secondly, peer or beer is a word coming from the local dialect Wolof. In our country, people are trying to interpret Quran, and when we are looking for the source, we are saying a piri in Wolof. A piri, it means that someone has detailed the source. The source is always with a B, beer, for well, a well. So we always tend to acknowledge that kind of explanation. Sheikh Musa wrote a text about the university. He is a Fulani, he's a foreigner, he doesn't speak Wolof, but he used the word be, so he agrees with people from Wolof. The letter Tha in Arabic, he said, Imam Abdel Qadir, when he came back, that he could use this word by using a F. And in one village, once, he wrote this with a F and a R, a F and a R. He talked about a scholar who was blessed. even his students were granted this blessing. Well, this is just to quote and to demonstrate what Wolof can show us. I have my sympathy for that kind of explanation. The one who wrote Zuhur al-Basatin was just to explain how we get to this explanation about fear. So the university Fear was founded by Judge Omar Fall, and scholars call him Judge Omar Fall, but the real name is Judge. The Judge is a honorific title for someone reaching some sort of size. Al-Qadi, his father is called Fatih Fuli, Mendesi. And Mendesi's father is called Jambal Django Fenjo. He's the first Egambo Jebor, meaning that he is the king of Jago Ebora. His grandfather is a prince. He emigrated from Cairo to Futa for political purposes. Because of some disputes between himself and his brothers. Thirdly, Adam de Mayo. This is not very far from the Futa River in the Wolof country. Sheikh Kadi was born in Futa. He learned and was educated in Futa. His father, his uncle, gave him an education. He studied, he got education, thanks to his father, his uncle, and then he left to the desert and got an extra education with shuyukh in the desert. So he traveled to the desert, and according to some oral versions, Dr. Charlotte documented this statement in a book. He left to Wallata, and that's where he heard the voice of the Qadiri. But we cannot be sure about it. We are not sure that he attended the University of Tunis. Then the judge came back. He came back to rebuilt his school. According to some historians, Hassan Ibushir Suleiman, they said that he organized some sort of a revival to a school founded by Ahmed Julata. He founded a school in the Bani Saleh story. Anyway, he tried to found his own school in Tul Darashid. The time dimension is Futa was very important. Kings put a pressure on anyone trying to create a university or a school. It was among the reasons for which Dinian Kubi had to put pressure and he has organized a scientific revival, a scientific rebirth on youth interested by the freedom of their country, and to some sort of enlightening all the areas in Tamasena They made different attempts to export this awareness and to create alliances and to find resources to attack the kingdom of Futa. Unfortunately, those efforts were done in vain. A war started, the war of Tuknan between Shōfuti against Tanyan Kumbyont, but they could not succeed. Brakna interfered in the politics of the region, in the policy of the region. In the region businesses, they were rivals, and they put pressure on the Futi people. And this is something written in the Mohammed Jewry documentation. Mondo Horma is a tax. Those are taxes paid by Braknet Raksa against, they were asking for protection. Braknet Raksa were some sort of the law enforcement in the area. They were using those taxes to move forward, to put forward their influences. So they tried to set up their own schools, but it could not succeed because of a lot of security pressures, and also because of the Tradza and Brakna interventions and the disputes between cousins on the kingdom of Futa. That's why Al-Qadi had to come back to his roots by moving to Kajarki. He realized that he knew the king before leaving to Futa. He left up to Kajol. He got in touch with the king, and the king said that he could get in touch with him in Gagas. This interview was the genesis. It was the genesis of the Viewer school. The king met this gentleman. He asked him some questions. Who are you? What's your background? And Al-Qadiya answered that I am the son of this person, and this person, he just wanted to show that he did belong to the aristocracy, but in fact it was very tied to his backgrounds, to his origins. Second question, who are they? He answered, my students. How are you going to protect yourself if you are facing a risk? He wanted to know if he had weapon. And he answered that he would defend himself with the Quran, with the Holy Quran. He said that he wanted a piece of land, a parcel of land, to do some farming, to pray and to build a mosque, the first mosque ever to be built, and a science institution. The king answered, Jota. I'm sorry, I'm trying to speed up to avoid to get too much into details. He said, Dajuf. You are going to cross your region, and if you feel some sincerity, he left to the Sarafur region. Many names are given to this area, to this region. In Walafan, I can't really tell you, explain you well of. So at the end of the day, he founded his school in the heart of his kingdom. Then he started to provide some teaching with youth, and imams were leading the revolution. The contract they had with the kingdom was that the Sheikh would never interfere in the political businesses. He should never ask him or his sons and grandsons to have an influence in the kingdom of Kashur. The judge wanted the king not to interfere in his area, and the king accepted. And this region is a sort of a free zone. It was freed by Al-Qadi. No one could interfere in this area, in this region. He was in this region until 1603. (1603) is the date. I can quote some scholars, very experts, very quickly. Yassine Bundu is the founder of the kingdom Buntu Masina. Sheikh Suleiman Bar, he is the leader of the revolution in Saleh-Fouta against Sheikh Abdul Qadir. He was the first imam. Sheikh Mumta Ebarjab, he was a Muslim scholar. Sheikh Qadi could not have deep links with people coming from the well-off area. The guy was a scholar, Sheikh Papam Sajjar. He was the Sheikh of Diop. He was the Sheikh of Ahmed Mbarki. He's very famous. Mama Chan, he was one of the first award winner from a Sheikh institution. Omar Fouti. So I'm going to put an end to my input. We close the circle. It may be a vicious circle. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. Much appreciated. The microphone, please. Thank you, Cher Tarfal, for this wonderful overview, this very comprehensive history about imams and founding fathers in the region of Fouta. It's a very important region fostering the Islamic culture in the world. Now we are going to call upon a very eminent personality from a scientific and religious background. Mr. Baké is the special conseiller, a special advisor of the President of Senegal. He is the grandson of a very important personality. He is very well famous in Senegal and in Mauritania. I give him the floor immediately. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I would like to express my gratitude for all the different speakers, for the great relevance of their deliveries, speeches, and inputs. I would like to thank His Excellency Sheikh Abdallah Ben Baya, who is working relentlessly to promote peace. he had the kindness to invite us to attend this very important African Conference for Peace. A very important conference conveying very interesting topics, gathering top scholars and top scientists with a very important diplomatic footprint. In addition to this, I would like to praise all the researchers in this room attending this conference. Mr. Chair, please allow me to praise these very important gatherings about peace. We would like to express our gratitude for the wonderful hospitality offered by the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, and we would like to reiterate our gratitude to Sheikh Abdallah Ben Baya for his devotion to peace and prosperity, acting relentlessly to promote peace in the world. Dear participants, in the beginning we had words and verbs. Iqra, read in English. Reading has become an Islamic obligation and a condition for developing a society. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, quote, "The one healing ignorance is interrogation, and God Almighty, at the time of illiteracy, when he was talking to them, he said that he's the one sending to illiterates a messenger who is coming from them, reciting those verses and teaching the book and wisdom, even if before he was lost." As an analogy, it shows that teaching, education, is the pillar of the Islamic house. The main role of Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, highlighted by those verses and the teaching of Quran, the transmission of the divine message, was about fulfilling a mission. This very important mission is conducted through the Islamic history by Quranic schools under different names. In Senegal, we call them Dara. And I would like to take advantage for praising Mr. Thal for his wonderful delivery. Secondly is about purification, about education. As an example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, is the highest educator and is a model by itself, following the prophetic traditions stated in the Hadith. Thirdly, is about teaching wisdom and education, transcending the two previous principles. It requires to teach the believers the charter of conduct to build the national building and the national environment. Let's not forget the divine obligation they should abide by. Schools and local collectivities have also a very important role to play in this environment. Consequently, the universal mission of Islam, taking into consideration the whole mankind, want to offer well-being and welfare to individuals as a whole and as individuals. In the Senegal society, those three values have remained for centuries under the authority of tradition schools. Islam, south of the Sahara, was at the beginning reserved to elites. It was not against the logic if we analyze the structural society in Africa to better understand the causes in this regard. For the leaders, they needed a trainer, a coach, different functions were found in Muslim scholars. It was consequently a necessity and a sort of prestige for the kings since the beginning of Islam and its rooting in the community. This peaceful religion advocating for stability is promoting traditional education and a school for life. The Dara, the traditional school in Senegal, will then be strengthened by what we call brotherhood, Fouta, Kaolack, Toyon, and Touba, and many others. They have managed to strengthen the brotherhood ties to boost and foster knowledge and skills. At that time, the teachers were asking the monarchs at that time resources to build a sanctuary and to promote education. The location was a very important process. Those locations were far from the urban centers, relying on paganism. The apprentice, the trainees receives a sound training and he was granted a lot of intellectual skills and competences, promoted and deeply rooted in the human equity as highlighted in the Holy Quran. He was not looking down on anyone because his identity was about human respect, difference, and divine wisdom. Consequently, the individual was taken as a reference and could ask for marriage any woman from any kind of tribes or any kind of social backgrounds. This is the origin of social weddings and social marriages. Consequently, the success of traditional schools were much more easier. Those schools were a refugee, an asylum for the most vulnerable communities. It prevented many disputes, conflicts that could have destroyed our country. Dear participants, Your Excellencies, the evolution of today's world is highlighted by a new environment. Different threats, multidimensional threats. It appears that an adaptation of traditional structures is a need, is a must to protect our society against violence, intolerance, and extremism. They have always showed a lot of resilience despite very weak resources. And to achieve so, they always relied on the main strength of their successes. And to continue to play this role of being an obstacle against extremism, traditional education should be in our mind. And it's a sort of recommendation I would like to deliver. It should adopt some criteria. First recommendation, we do think that it should continue to reaffirm its anchoring in the local environment. Consequently, the students and the pupils will be able to face the external challenges. Secondly, education should be of great quality with a good mastering of Islamic principles that would prevent students to misinterpret the messages that would lead to lack of tolerance. It highlights the issue of training and teachers coaching. Next point, traditional education should take into consideration pedagogical resources to better understand the challenges and to understand the different strategies deployed by extremists. Fourth recommendation, this education should onboard professional training, vocational training to offer jobs, opportunities to trainees, pupils, and students. We all know that poverty is a very fertile ground exploited by the extremists. Fifth recommendation, governments and the Ummah should better take into consideration the concerns showed by the traditional education with a special support on the happiness of citizens. Sixth recommendation, we think it is highly important to build pathways between traditional education and modern education. Seventh recommendation, we should avoid any kind of marginalizations by offering to students joining traditional education the same knowledge and skills as modern education. Next point, an inclusive and comprehensive education in Senegal. For instance, in Senegal, the state is dedicating 20% of the resources to traditional schools because 20% of students are attending traditional education. This is something that we should rely on. Last but not least, we think it is important to preserve the very important assets of traditional education as opposed to modern education. Only focusing on teaching, traditional education is more about educating a citizen who will be able to embody the prophetic principles. It's based on teaching and education. A focus is made on knowledge positive principles and social capacities, know-how and know how to be. That's why I think it's a much more comprehensive education. Dear moderator, I have delivered different recommendations which would be very important to fight against extremism. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Baquet, for your great input. Dara, this wonderful spiritual education environment. We have started by giving the floor to a Tunisian fellow, and now we are going to give the floor to Mr. Mahdo. He's a mufti in Tunisia. He's belonging to a great family. His father, Sheikh Muhtar Ben Mabdou, known from everyone. You have the floor, gentlemen. This is the last intervention of this session before moving to the next one. In the name of God, the grateful and the merciful, peace be upon the Prophet, his family, and his companions. Thank you for giving me the floor, even if my intervention has not been planned. I would like to elaborate on Mr. Mansour's delivery about Al-Zaytuna. He talked about the 11 ulema attending the University Al-Zaytuna. A couple of points regarding Al-Zaytuna. Al-Zaytuna was an education institution, a scientific institution. It is the first Islamic university. Our colleague from Al-Azhar talked about Al-Kaaba, North Africa, Al-Azhar. In ancient text, Al-Kaaba from North Africa was Zaytuna and not Al-Azhar. Zaytuna has adopted curricula, very versatile curricula. It was also a center for living together and tolerance. We are looking for peace. And within Al-Zaytuna, everyone used to live together. We even have two trends, the Halifite rite and the Malikite rite. When ulema from Al-Zaytuna were lecturing within the higher education, they compared between Ibn al-Arabi, Al-Jassas. Al-Zaytuna was a very enriching institution. Within this institution, it didn't only have the intellectual elite, but Al-Zaytuna was an institution to disseminate religion. It was also the core of the Tunisian resistance against the French colonialism, which tried to replace Arabic language by French language. It tried to eradicate Islamic religion, but Al-Zaytuna has become the stronghold of Algerian nationalists during the Algerian Revolution. One of the graduated from Al Zaytuna was Ibn Badis. He launched, he worked a lot, he fought for the independence of Algeria. The speaker is now reciting a poem, a poetry, an art of poetry from Ibn Badis. This is what I wanted to say about Al Zaytuna, University Al Zaytuna. Thank you very much. We are now reaching the end of this session. I would like to thank all the speakers. We have followed very important inputs about Al-Azhar, about Al Zaytuna, the Mauritanian Al-Mahdara, the experience in Senegal. Thank you very much for your great inputs. Thank you. See you soon.
إذن الجلسة الثانية تبدأ مباشرة.
The next session is going to start now. We are going to start the next session. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, the second session moderated by His Excellency Sheikh Atman Ahmed Maani, with Professor Jilali Mrini and other scholars and professors.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Alhamdulillah. Praise be the Lord. Peace be upon the Prophet, his family, and his companion. We shall be starting the next session. The title of this session is the role played by traditional education in fostering intellectual independence and fighting against extremism. This is the major point we're going to address during this session. Many things should be done regarding the role played by this traditional ancient teaching. Different speakers will elaborate upon this point. And now we are going to give the floor to the different speakers. Comments will be done at the end of the session. Education in the Muslim world has a very important role to play. This is something which is clear as water.
Is of a religious interest And it's always something that it intends to convert this teachings into fortresses and protections against extremism, fanaticism, and anything that is prevented by science, the protection of peace, responsibilities to undertake, as well as anything that should be undertaken in line with religious principles according to what's been stipulated in the Holy Quran, the Hadiths, and the Sunnah. From the moment when the welcoming country played a crucial role on the African continent due to the contributions of its scholars during their travels towards the Eastern countries and the Western countries, there's always been a dedication to science, and this is totally contradictory versus a thesis that connect the African continent with obscurantism and ignorance in the past. Mukhtar Bunbuna had shed the light in his time on the role of science that is intrinsically connected to the role of religion in order to enlighten souls and spirits. And we are going to ask support to the Almighty for him to help us in our sincere quest for knowledge and in a collective manner. And without further ado, I'm going to head over to Dr. Ahmed and Naini. The floor is yours, dear Professor. In behalf of God Almighty, glory to God, prayers on the prophets, their families and companions. And peace be upon God. We should remember that the knowledge is the one authorized by God, God who knows everything and understands anything. God glorified our prophet, exhorting all creatures to recite prayers and greetings anytime the name of the prophet is mentioned. As His Eminence Dr. Sheikh bin Masher said, the topic selected for this intervention is the role of the Mauritanian Makhtara in the propagation of values of tolerance and peace. Therefore, traditional Islamic teachings before the Makhtara came to light undergone several stages of evolution throughout the years of knowledge and science came to light. And these played their role of being the first mahdarat in these countries. Mahdarat that welcomed citizens of miscellaneous nationalities, ethnical belongings, or linguistic expressions, and they wanted to divulgate knowledge, to propagate the peace in the light of the principles of Islam. And this is one of the major roles played by the Mahdarat. This being a preamble to my speech, I should like to formulate three requests when I shall circulate this presentation later on. I would like to make a sort of a small recap in order to respect our timing. I'm going to remind you the characteristics and nature of the Mahdara, its definition, as well as the adopted methodology adopted by the Shingit Mahdara and its specificities and intrinsic characteristics, as well as the role played by the Mahdara in the propagation of peace and tolerance, as well as its role to celebrate the struggle against fanatism and extremism. And then we will come to a conclusion. For what regards the first part dedicated to the Mahdara, its very definition, methodology, and characteristics, this Mahdara is a name that serves to talk about a place where some people are going to be present. Ibn Rabiha had told us in his time about the Mahdaras as being a space open to welcome different personalities under tents in different dedicated spaces that shall be dedicated and devoted to the accumulation of erudition and knowledge. The Mahdara was used by the Shingites at the time in order to qualify their training centers and knowledge centers. In the Hassani language, they call it the Mahdara, and others may pronounce it as the Mahdara. There are some divergences as to the etymology of this word that considered as being pronounced as the Mahdara, which is the school, according to the historical Genesis and Zubair, who said in 1316, when he talks about Salah ad-Din Ayyubi and the heritage that he left behind, and the very fact that he granted specific to underprivileged children. The Shingit Mahdara further is an institution that played several roles, both social, cultural, educational. Hence, the myriad of definitions listed by researchers in the world of the Mahdarat. Mahdara is also a Bedouin caravan or university, and it teaches the sciences of religion. And it's largely differing from many other Quranic schools. These Mahdarats keep on disclosing knowledge and knowledge in several countries of Africa, in the desert, and further welcome disciples and students stemming from different countries and horizons in spite of the shortage of resources of these Mahdara. The methodology of education within these Mauritanian Mahdarat is a proof of their reality in the like of what is mentioned in the Holy Quran, a Quran that is to be learned by heart and kept in the minds and brains of the learners, and shall perpetrate its apprenticeship by the recitation of such verses by the apprentices. The truth is, this will help documenting this heritage and help it to be learned and safeguarded. This in order to remain on the track of the good, and in order to avoid obscurantism and lost soul, which starts by the learning of the Holy Quran, the exegesis, which is the explanation of the Quran, the explanation of the rituals, the praise, the prayers, grammar, the linguistics and other sciences stemming from the Sharia and the case law. And the student shall then start by writing on a wooden board. He will learn this lesson by heart and shall recitate it to the Sheikh, and the Sheikh will then
pour ensuite être examiné par rapport au contenu du cours appris. C'est là la méthodologie classique et conventionnelle du mode d'apprentissage. Un apprentissage par cœur, suite à quoi
to which the examination shall be passed by the disciples, and there is a distinction between the disciplines taught within the rival in the accumulation of the knowledge that they initially learned and acquired with a lot of devotion and dedication within these mahadra. They shall spend nights praying and repeating their knowledge and producing poetry that shall be added to the glory of these mahadra, beacon of knowledge where many scholars gathered representing many different disciplines in the search of the highest spheres of knowledge. The Mahadra is a popular institution that aims to embrace any human individual who would like to be attached to it. It's also a Bedouin and a mobile university. This is one of the salient traits of these universities that have reached up to the rural areas and the desert. From the moment when this is dedicated and tailored for nomad tribes, they were the very pioneers of this Mahadra. We will also understand that the Sheikh of the Mahdara, whenever he addresses his disciples, shall display such qualities as of an extremely well-spoken speaker with a lot of experience and purity. A professor of the Mahadra shall never pronounce his magistral speech without having performed his ablutions or before any of his prayers, and he will be faithful in the transmissions of the knowledge that he will intend to convey to his disciples, whilst trying to share the whole knowledge in order to leave any doubts aside. Since the quest of knowledge is part of the intrinsic values of a good Muslim and is one of the pathways that should be undertaken to reach paradise and beyond, in the afterlife. And this is how all the virtues of a good Muslim should, of course, include the search for knowledge. And this, of course, shall be guaranteeing a very distinguished position, whether here or else in the afterlife, without forgetting about the dedication and sense of sacrifice that any person who is in search of knowledge should be vested with, because no one can ignore the devotion this requires in order to be able to acquire such knowledge and science. Third part, the rules of the Mahdara in the diffusion of peace as a driver for peace in this arid desert. Islam and its culture underwent without unprecedented success. Therefore, the search of the objectives of the Mahdara made it that its generosity and its spiritual illumination enabled it to play the role of a driver for peace in this African continent and beyond. This is the reason why many scholars who precisely studied in these Mahadra have brought with them the torch of the Muslim civilization and have been disclosing such values as peace and good deeds and transforming Islam into something that is to be conveyed throughout predicators, responsible human beings, and able to disclose the Muslim faith in line with its rituals and preserving the Muslim heritage. The essential message is to try and disclose this heritage whilst safeguarding peace and security in the search for preserving peace and good within these communities, living separate from many kinds of threats. Islam is obviously one of the well-being vectors as well as a plenitude. Sidra Ibrahim, in his time, laid the building bricks of its message on these principles in order to save pagan societies from being lost and from the state of disarray in which they were, because these pagan societies were at the time polytheists and would venerate stone statues. The peace being the ultimate objective, which is intrinsically connected to the human rights. Peace, of course, should remain a noble objective and one of the most important searches, if not the ultimate search, which should not be achieved without learning and education. The Mauritanian Mahadra converted the Bedouin society into an educated and literate society where women also benefit from the right to learn. In most of the Awaya tribes, most of these women should be able to rival with men in learning practices and the mastering of reading and writing. The Mahadara enables the society to be able to appraise science at its right value, therefore enabling a fair distribution of this knowledge between genders in order to perpetrate this knowledge and heritage from one generation to another. Siashingit, there is no Zamzam. There are nevertheless Mahadras that could embody the role of relentless sources of knowledge far away from any extremism in the brotherhood mindset and in cordial atmosphere in order to make sure that one may fulfill any discrepancies existing in terms of case law, exegesis, and interpretation of the principles of Islam in order to enable the consecration of tolerance, immunize individuals and communities from any forms of extremism. Jasir Auda fairly said that rationality and in-between position, far away from any madness and extreme position, can only be acquired throughout the learning of science, which therefore opens a pathway towards humility and far away from any radicalization and extremism, which are very often connected to ignorance and to individual subjectiveness, which should be overcome in order to enable a certain security to prevail, as well as intellectual moderation with characteristics which were embodied precisely by these mahdarat, with the need to inspire themselves on the moderate interpretations of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah without nevertheless trying to pervert them throughout fallacious or fanatic interpretations. In the like of what the Prophet exhorted us to do whilst inviting us to follow the pathway he laid down for us and inspiring himself on the Holy Quran and avoiding anything that was banned. And of course, trying to always cast the lights on the intrinsic values to the Sharia, such as described by the Almighty. Therefore, transforming Islam into a religion of righteousness, integrity. Ibn al-Qayyim in his explanation and interpretation of Quranic verses with regard to the description of this religion as being a region of righteousness, integrity, a religion of high-level values. The Prophet further opposed himself to such values as extremism or fanaticism. And we would therefore remind that Sidna Muhammad is a prophet who embodied a perfect model of humanity and perfect humankind, embodying values such as tolerance, and who always gave privileged treatment even to foreigners, and he always kept the gates open to repent and the good intermediate position between the pleasures of this material world and the elevation of the soul in order to reach paradise, enabling marriage, the rupture of the fasting, sleep after prayer, and this is the pathway one should undertake, and this is the way to go for all Muslims. And I should like to rest my case, and I promise that I will circulate my paper later on if you're interested. Thank you, dear President of the session, and thank you all for your kind attention.
بارك الله في الشيخ أحمد النيني.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Ahmed Louni. Thank you for telling us about this very important tradition in Mauritania, the Mahdara, its role, the role of its institution in Mauritania. Unfortunately, we do not have much more time, and it would be interesting to talk more in detail about the Mahdara. But we run short of time. There is a book now, and I will head over on to the next speaker, namely, on behalf of God, the Great and the Merciful. Ladies and gentlemen, without a doubt, are you already tired? We are running out of time. I see you falling asleep. So I think it is high time for me to conclude before everybody leaves the room. And this is the reason why I'm going to try to be concise in my words. I will spare you etymologics, yet I shall tell you about the merits of my speech in a more straightforward manner. Since I always have prepared my time, I will circulate my speech later on if you're interested. So I'm going to now entertain you about the role of Quranic schools as to the circulation of peaceful principles. Al-Khalwa is something in our countries which is the place where students gather. It's what we call the hermitage or the retreat. Names could differ from one country to another. Mahdara in a country could also be a place dedicated or comparable to what I'm going to explain you here, which is a retreat. A retreat is a very important stage in the life of a Muslim. The Prophet said that the best of you is the one who will learn the Quran and will teach it. These institutions play, therefore, a very important role as to the divulgation, the propagation of peace. I should further like to point out that there are some circles of knowledge which objective is to divulgate the culture of peace and I am from Chad. And as you might know, we have a tradition in Chad when we organize a retreat in Chad. Mind you, there are many circles for retreat. There are many schoolings, many Quranic teachings in schools. Muslims deploy many efforts in order to teach the Quran to their children. And therefore, it has become a very intrinsic principle within each family. And the percentage of children who start their learning of life by the Quran is estimated around 99% for two reasons. First of all, the arrival of Islam from the outset in Chad. You need to bear in mind that Chad citizens discovered the Islam from the first century of the Hijra. Al-Uqba and Al-Nafir played a crucial role in the Islamization of Africa and the Iberic Peninsula at the time. With regard to the percentage of Muslims in our country, it is estimated around 80% of the inhabitants of Chad, 16 millions of Chad dwellers or citizens. Therefore, the retreats, or what we call hermitage, that are to be found in Chad are estimated around 3,000 retreats per annum. Our tradition in Chad, when we teach the Quran, is as follows. And this explains why many Chadians know the Quran by heart, by the way. It is said that the Chad is the country with most millions of people who have memorized the Quran. There are many million Chad citizens who know it by heart. Mind you, children also get to learn other kinds of disciplines. For example, subjects related to Islam. They also learn other subject fields that are of non-religious nature. The learning of the Quran enables these children to master and learn other kinds of texts. And these children have demonstrated that they could be patient enough to dedicate their time to learning, and they have a very high level of focus and concentration. For what regards the retreats, these have played a very important role as to the literacy of the Chadian population. These small schools have dramatically decreased the level of illiterate people in the country. Therefore, throughout this struggle against illiteracy, it enables the little students to go from one village to another, to travel from one city to another throughout these retreats. And sometimes it happens that they even leave their country to go to another country in order to enlarge their knowledge and to keep on building that learning of the Quran. During this learning process, a student may acquire other virtues, other skills, because they are going to get acquainted with other students displaying other virtues, other skills and kinds of knowledge. This is why the people who are responsible for the teaching of the Quran, they are called the Gawana in Chad. They have a mission, and this is the one that they need to accomplish, since they have preserved this culture and could propagate this culture between people. Most of these retirees are going to learn about the Islamic case law, principles of the faith, And there are many different subject matters supporting the learning of the Quran.
Students is being taught jurisprudence, is being taught faith and spiritual education to acquire many virtues. And at the end of the day, the students become someone immunized against extremist thinking. That's why those gatherings, those retreats are very important. They are far from being extremist or radicalized. They are immunized against extremism. It's the main role played by those gatherings and those retreats to preserve our population from extremist thinkings. We also have societies, or better say, retreats and gatherings of Islamic studies. A special curricula is determined to teach Islam today. The youngest learn the duties and obligations of Muslim people. They learn everything related to Islam Sunni, unify Islam, which does not separate. We also have the Hadith, the Prophet's tradition, covering the behavior of Prophet, peace be upon him, his companion and his family. In this regard, students learn everything positive. The Prophet said, God wrote that everything he created is good. End of quote. One very important point, a very important point. We have talked about the importance of those gatherings, of those circles and societies to disseminate principle of peace, moderation, love, are principles of the Quranic schools, building trust between people and love. And love enables to have solidarity within a society. Our Prophet said, quote, it is important to respect the principles of Islam. The society is like a ship. Everyone on board of the ship should show some solidarity, end quote. Before wrapping up my delivery, I would like to give you a couple of recommendations. Couple of words. First and foremost, parents should give a lot of importance to their children's education from an ethical point of view, from a spiritual standpoint. They should teach Quran, Prophet's tradition, and this education should start from the beginning, especially regarding teaching about faith and religion. Faith is a condition for the good behavior of Muslim people. It involves the moderation of the good Muslims. You need to pick the right teacher. Quran teachers may not be sincere. If he's not, he may corrupt students. Thirdly, state should preserve retreats and Quranic schools. State should organize those gatherings, should fund those retreats, should take care of teachers. Most of the countries wouldn't give any penny to Quranic schools, which may be a problem. Pupils and students joining those Quranic schools are like all the other Muslims. The state gives a lot of importance to school, to academic institutions. Quranic schools should be managed in a very adequate manner by the state. Thirdly, we need to give time to children. Parents and teachers should dedicate some time to children. They should direct them to preserve the youth and to protect the youth from the different dangers. Ibn Abbas said to his son, quote, I saw that this man is giving you a lot of importance compared to your colleagues. You need to be sincere to him, you need to be faithful to him, and you should not betray him. Unquote. Other recommendations. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Really appreciate it. God bless this country. God bless these people. Thanks to the organizers. May the peace of God be upon you.
أحسنت فضيلة.
Thank you. Thank you for sticking to your time. We don't have much time left. We do not have much time left. Quranic schools have a lot of importance. Quranic institutions are very important as far as the security of the country is involved. They do preserve the country from foreign interference, from foreign interferences, which target is to twist the country's values. We have the experience of Sheikh Ma'lani, an experience from Abdel Qadir al-Jazairi. A Tunisian fellow talked about the University Al-Zaytuna. This is why we need to have the capacity to defend your religion, and we need to defend our homeland in the same way to Gaza inhabitants have played a very important role regarding resistance. Students who have learned Quran have defended their homeland to resist against the invasion. And may God bless them. May God give them victory. I now open the floor to the next speakers. In the name of God, the grateful, the merciful, peace be upon the process, his family, and his companions. First and foremost, I would like to thank the president of this committee. He's a very tolerant president, a very nice chairman. Secondly, the organizers of this event. I'm talking about people working behind the curtain, backstage, sorry. And even if we said that we needed to wrap up our deliveries without deep diving into some tiny details. So I'm going to try to be as short, as brief as possible. Traditional education in Morocco. I'm talking about the University Al-Qarawiyyin. Has a great role to play to challenge extremism by calling upon some very important elements. First of all, my introduction will be designed around Abdallah Ben Dia's statement, who said, quote, "How can we implement a roadmap to achieve some of those goals and to have an experience on the ground, and how to implement what is common between us?" End quote. Following Abu Dhabi, he moved to other conferences and he elaborated upon the importance of traditional education, and he fulfilled his attempt, and I'm sure that I had the same idea as he had. That's why the traditional training to challenge extremism is fully capable to achieve this goal, this noble cause to which we abide within this conference, when we have all the elements and all the features to face and to challenge extremism and radicalism. Among those features, I would quote different elements: how to leverage traditional education to disseminate the first point. The scholar, the expert who has deep knowledge about religion. A jurisprudence built on some solid ground is a must to move forward. You can not give any ground to people who want to politicize religion and to redirect the religion following the jurisprudence. If there is a gap, people will take advantage of it. And as the poet said, quote, "If we have a wrong attitude, we can do anything except if a force is opposing to us," end quote. So let's read between the lines. the one who cannot move forward because he is hindered by obstacles. If we are talking about the habus, the properties allocated to any kind of religious operations, we cannot get out of the religious text because the religious text is dedicated for human beings and animals. That's why experts, scholars, should have a deep understanding of the religious environment to disseminate the religious learning to his students and pupils. Those are the basis of the religious education in Morocco. It's a tradition and it does carry on. This is how we train our teachers in Al-Qarawiyyin. Next features. Understanding Al-Sharia, the Islamic law. Al-Faqir, the scholar, the expert, has more than 30 rules shaping and designing his education, and I'm fully aware of that. So we should prevent from all needs that may affect us. We need to be accurate in order to avoid wrong and understanding and misunderstandings. Imam al-Shatibi stated that all the Ummahs agreed that Sharia was to preserve the 5 needs, and needless to quote them. To understand the goal of Al-Sharia and its implementation in the traditional education is a must to conduct the teaching, the education, and to prevent from any kind of radicalism. I graduated in Al-Qarawiyyin and then I taught in Al-Qarawiyyin, and I swear to God, many scholars never invented anything, al-bid'ah, something which has nothing to do with religion. No one even dared to perform al-bid'ah. Among the goal of al-Sharia is not about telling people they are non-believers, kuffar. This is not a prerogative. Imam al-Shatibi said, if we manage to understand this environment, sometimes some points can foster science. How can we label someone as an unfaithful? This is not acceptable. This is an exception. This is not a rule. Labeling someone would be a niptal. That's why we should not permit people of labeling people as miscreant, as disbeliever. If the Prophet wanted to label people as believers and disbelievers, how could we move forward in his religious environment and how to disseminate the God message? Regarding traditional education, we need to get away from any kind of interpreting which does not rely on logic, which does not rely on texts. Some interpretings are very far from the reality, can only twist the reality and lead toward radicalism. Mahani gave different examples in his work, Al-Badr Talib. We have many modern practices which have caused a lot of discrepancies involving people in tensions and conflicts due to religion. A very important example, Al-Fajr al-Kadhib. Though we have the right today, in this modern era, that people are liars, do we have the right to treat people as liars? This is the concept of Fajr al-Kadhib. Why should we rely on Al-Fajr al-Kadhib? Many people have break fast because of this concept. Even the Ministry of Habus of Endowments in Mauritania have elaborated regarding this very important topic. People breaking fast because of his own education regarding Fajr al-Kadhib should fast because he doesn't have the right to rely on his own interpreting to break fast. Another very important point. The final year of traditional education is awarded by designating the person who is the best student. The reason for that is to determine the causes which have led to this hierarchy. There are differences between mastering the rules, handling the rules. There are differences of levels among the mastering of the rules, the religious rules. And what I can tell you is that people, even if Shatibi mentioned something very important, he died in 80. He wrote a book which was not interpreted by anyone, because this person was far ahead compared to us. He said that for interpreting, we have two aspects. We have the Sharia and we have the goals. What are the targets behind the religious texts? And I realized, managed to do that. Need to avoid any kind of radicalism. There is no bid'ah. If there is a difference, you cannot accuse another imam that he is a disbeliever because he's not in line with what you think is logical. You should never label someone as a disbeliever or as a miscreant because you don't agree with him. If the point needs some extra information, scholars teach their students that it is all right to be different, to have discrepancies in a book. It is said that you cannot label anyone as a disbeliever. Do not label someone, a believer, as a disbeliever, because you never know who is closer to God, because he's a man of the book, Ahl al-Kitab. So it is forbidden to label him as a disbeliever. Al-Faqih, which is very common in fatwa and in rules and settlements, is a man going to church who manage the full scope of religious science and Islamic law, far from a wrong understanding, misunderstanding After understanding the tools of the ijtihad, the jurisprudence interpreting, he should abide by the religious laws and rules. And if you hear Si Abbas Bellani Al-Fasi, if you hear him after the Al-Asr praying, he opened his door for fatwa. He was entitled to do so by the local authorities. This is something I learned from Mufti of the Moroccan Kingdom, Al-Husseini. He was teaching. He said, "What do you have?" I said, "I have a rule of jurisprudence. We can justify things without understanding the wisdom of something." But he stopped me. This rule of Abbas al-Bannani was a very tricky point. We had someone who was questioning the fatwa, and he asked, "Where can I find the home of Si Abbas al-Bannani?" They said, it's in Sidi Bouzid. Someone said, "Come with me." He knocked on the door. He knocked on Sidi Abbas al-Bannani doors. He asked him many questions. He was answering all the questions. While asking questions, a lady gave him tea. And then he asked her, "God bless her." Give the person who showed him in my house something. Give the lady who gave me tea something. In the living room, a man was beseated. Si Abbas al-Bannani said, "Give this man something." And for the lady offering tea, and the other gentleman showing me your home, and the third one, what's the relation I have with this third man? I told you, give him something. Do it. You can justify something without explaining the logic of an action. He thought that he was about to criticize this person. But as opposed, this very important scholar was sitting with someone who had no resources. He is the Mustafti who recommended. He's an educator. He's the one training and coaching. This is the way we were organizing traditional training and education in Al-Qarawiyyin and in other countries. Those reasons are going to show us the way to stability in Africa. I'm going now to wrap up my input because I have to stick to the time given, and may God bless you. May God bless our scholars. May God bless this country for everything He is giving for this conference. People working backstage, and I ask God to protect this country. May God bless this country. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Le micro, s'il vous plaît, le micro, the microphone, please. In the Islamic Maghreb, we give the floor to Mr. Doku. His advisor is going to talk and take the floor on his behalf. In the name of God, the grateful and the merciful, first and foremost. May God help me. My speech will be very brief. Please pray for His Excellency Mamdouh Dicko, who has some health problems. He couldn't be here, he couldn't attend this conference. He asked me to forward him his gratitude and his strong appreciation for people who are organizing this conference, His Excellency Ben Baya, and people working with him. The topic of my delivery is about traditional education and the importance of consolidating and strengthening peace. I would appreciate if the speakers could quote some very tangible examples showing our reality, even though if some of them have quoted some very important scholars. However, the understanding of the overall situation is utterly important if we have a better visibility, if we have something tangible. Sheikh Mohammed Dicko has expressed his gratitude in the education, in the traditional training, traditional education. Dusher is coming from a very great background, located in a region known as one of the most noble region as far from a religious standpoint, and showing a very important footprint in terms of religion and faith. I'm talking about Tombouctou. This is very close to the Islamic Republic of Tombouctou. I'm not going to give you a lecture regarding Tombouctou, but please let me tell you that many Muslim scholars have communicated permanently with Tombouctou by mail or in person. That's why we have so many written documents located in Tombouctou. That's why we set up an Islamic university training loads and loads of people in Tombouctou, sons of the sub-Saharan Africa. It was the extension of the deep religious belief deeply rooted since the beginning of Islam in the sub-Saharan area through the trade commercial caravans, bringing peace and commerce. Islam entered in Africa through peace and not through war. This is why we appreciate peace, and we want to defend ourselves against any kind of conflicts. Gao, city of Guinea, close from Tombouctou. Hamdallah, founded by Sheikh Ahmed, he said, quote, it had more than 600 students. He said that he created this city based on justice and equity. I founded this city on the basis of justice. May God bless this city. Justice and religion, when they are associated at the same time, at the same place, you can only produce peace. With no further ado, I only wanted to share with you the greetings from the Sheikh. He really supported my traditional education, even come in this country by walking, looking for knowledge from Tombouctou till Adebachar, to be trained, to be educated at the source. These ties with this country are very important. And countries from the sub-Saharan area like Mali are deeply related with northern countries on the basis of religion and education, and any kind of exchanges between kings. Mohammed, Abdel Karim, El Mukhaili do testify those very important relations, those governors who were making sure to disseminate this culture of peace. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
شكرا للأخ محمد.
Thank you, Mohammed Adama. Please allow me to express my gratitude to all the speakers for their great inputs, for their wonderful deliveries, about their research. Please let me express my gratitude to the wonderful audience for following these very important deliveries. And I do hope that this session will be blessed by God. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Dear guests, we shall carry on with the scientific sessions for tomorrow and after tomorrow. Please join us tomorrow as soon as possible. We shall be starting at 9 a.m. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for being here. Assalamu alaikum.